Which is more valuable, the real deal or a convincing copy? Whether it's counterfeit money, a forged Monet, or fake news, the answer is usually obvious. And this seems especially true in medicine. When our health is on the line, we want the genuine article. But for many years, it's been common knowledge that patients can in fact get better when given phony treatments, the famous placebo effect. And while we often use placebo just to mean bogus, the more we understand about this medical oddity, the more it feels like the distinction between real and fake might not be so clear or useful after all. Placebos are as old as the art of healing itself, but over time, as medicine became less about folk remedies and more about verifiable results, they began to pose a problem, because they made the data we were relying on less reliable. How could you tell if a treatment was really working or just triggering a placebo effect? The solution was the Randomized Controlled Trial, or RCT, in which participants get either the treatment or a dummy. Then the two sets of results are compared to reveal the average effect of the treatment. Today, RCTs are the gold standard in drug development, a major reason the medicine is so much more dependable than a century ago, and the reason most of us have heard of placebos. But this general awareness can make it easy to overlook that the whole thing is pretty weird. How can fake medicine produce real results? The answer lies in the complex relationship between body and mind. In much the same way that Pavlov's dogs were conditioned to salivate at the sound of a dinner bell, we learn to associate medical treatment with physical improvement, and activating those associations can be enough to start feeling better. But while that might make it sound like placebos are purely subjective, tricking the mind into feeling better without having an objective impact on the body, this is far from true. Take painkillers. These work by blocking pain signals in your brain, but pills from the pharmacy aren't the only things capable of doing this. Your body produces natural pain-killing hormones of its own, which it releases in response to external ones. So when you take an aspirin, the pain relief comes partly from the drug, but also from your body's own mechanisms. What placebos do then is trigger that same reaction, just through expectation rather than medication. And the same principle has been observed with loads of other drugs, including antidepressants, asthma inhalers, Parkinson's medications, and more. What's especially wild is that these expectations aren't only shaped by taking a pill or getting an injection, but by everything from the language doctors use to the color, size, and packaging of pills, all of which can be deliberately leveraged to maximize benefit. Making the placebo effect work for us like this is a cheap and simple way of getting the most out of treatments we're already using. But could we go further? How about actually prescribing placebos? The obstacle here is medical ethics. It's obviously wrong to lie to a patient about their treatment, but telling them they're getting a placebo would undermine any positive expectations, which defeats the purpose, right? Well, not necessarily. It turns out the placebo effect can work even when patients know they're not getting the real thing. So-called open-label placebos still depend on the positive associations of things like seeing a doctor and taking pills, but also, and more importantly, on patients' willingness to trust in the power of the placebo effect, making this a viable therapeutic approach that doesn't violate the rights of the patient or duties of the doctor. Promising as this all might sound, though, it's important to recognize that placebos can't do everything. They're no substitute for antibiotics, blood transfusions, or chemotherapy, for instance. And despite being harmless themselves, their widespread adoption does carry risks. If someone mistakenly self-diagnoses and prescribes themselves a placebo, that might delay or prevent them getting the treatment they seriously need. More broadly, there are already lots of unqualified influencers out there touting dubious supplements, so popularizing the idea of sugar pills to cure your ills could make that worse, leading us to a slightly bizarre situation where we're better off getting placebos exclusively from qualified healthcare professionals. Realistically, embracing the paradoxes of the placebo effect is bound to make us uncomfortable. We often conceptualize the world through neat oppositions, like real and fake, mind and body, active and passive. But placebos challenge us to think in a more nuanced and pragmatic way, and given how much there is to be gained, that challenge is worth taking on. After all, if fake medicine works, then it is, for practical purposes, medicine. Likewise, the mind may be different from the body, but it clearly influences how the body heals. So considering the part that this strange phenomenon could play in healthcare is an invitation to put less emphasis on what things are and more on what they can do.